Okay, so welcome from Sadeh. We're here with Sadeh. Roland's here with me actually. And this is the fifth and possibly final session on the concentration meditation from the Sefer Yetzirah. So what we've done up until now, we've gone through Rambam, we went through Abraham ben Rambam, we had a look at Shulchan Aruch. We goes there, we went over the Mishnah, we did some meditation right the first session on the imagination practice. We then looked at the Shara Kedusha and the 4 levels of concentration, kavanah, devekut, hitbodedut, and hishtabut, and then hitbodedut. We looked at hishtabut in different contexts. We then went through last week. We looked at the Mishnah itself. We looked at the 4 different types of activities within the Mishnah, and we looked at hakika and hatziva. We looked at those preliminary ideas there, and how hakika and hatziva are looked at as hakika would be the applied concentration, hatziva is sustained concentration. So within hakika, we're trying to that requires an ongoing application of attention. And how like hakika is the material, the background material is still there. And with hatziva, things are already kind of extracted, carving out. And we saw that in Abu Lafia. So this time around, I actually want to go into the practical instructions on this type of meditation, in particular from Chassidut, because I feel like within Chassidut, so like Abu Lafia said, the only practice which is explained in the Sefer Yetzirah is the practice of tziruf. All the other ones are not explained. And so he brings the introduction as to what is hakika and hatziva, but he doesn't necessarily teach that practice himself. And it's only within Chassidut that we see this as a practice of the concentration on the letters themselves, as opposed to the permutation of those letters. So what I want to do today is introduce you to a few texts from the Chassidut, and then we'll go back and look at the Mishnah, and I'll detail certain elements from the Mishnah, and we'll bring in certain other ideas as well. B'ezrat Hashem, hopefully we'll have time to finish all of it, and if we don't, then we'll leave it over till next time. So let me just first bring in an idea from the Baal Shem Tov. Let me share the screen with you. There we go. So when I was in yeshiva, I used to collect sections, quotes from different places. This is a document which is quotations from Chassidut, when I first started studying Chassidut. And I have one from the Gemara, also from Chazal. These are the ones which kind of took my fancy. So you'll see here, this is an interesting piece from Sefer Baal Shem Tov. It was the first Sefer Chassidut I studied, and this is in Parashat Bechukotai. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm just going to read the underlined things here. So Baal Shem Tov comes along and he introduces a practice, and he says, Ikar avodat haboreh yitbarach shemo hu devekut ba'itlavut ba'avodato yitbarach. The ikar, the essence of the service of the divine, blessed be his name, is devekut. That is the essential service of God. This is a classic thing. This is probably where Gershom Scholem, kind of in his major trends in Jewish mysticism, he said that this is the one thing which identifies Chassidut as a thing, as their main principle. And possibly, clearly that's what he says here, the Baal Shem Tov. The essence of divine service is devekut, and hitlahavut be'avodat Hashem, and the enthusiasm within that service. So it's not like devekut and hitlahavut, or either of those two things, or what are they? They're separate. Devekut is the central practice, and hitlahavut in that practice. I guess, maybe it is, maybe it isn't that. Or devekut, and then hitlahavut ba'avodato in other types of service. So different types of service. The main service is devekut, and within other types of service, essentially is what's essential is the itlahavut, and possibly it leads on to what he says next is vilimud torato sheyeh b'tchilu v'chimu, and that so again he's listing a whole bunch of things. So or he's explaining itlahavut possibly, uncertain. But the study of Torah with love and fear, or fear and love, b'tchilu v'chimu, and machmad zeh yachol hu ledabek l'Ba'ashem Again, so if we I don't want to do too much analysis in this one particular text, but he says here the essential practice is devekut, and the enthusiasm in God's service, and which is so the enthusiasm in His service is the study of Torah with love and fear, and that leads one to devekut. Right, so devekut is the essential practice, and the hitlavut, the enthusiasm in Torah, and in the hitlavut, the enthusiasm in service, which an explanation is, or in addition, either in addition, or which is the service or the study of Torah with love and fear. And that leads to the ability to attach oneself to God. And he says kivyachol, as though you could, because really he says that really you can't attach yourself to God because God is a raging fire. It's kind of analogous. That's what he's bringing that here. So it's like you attach yourself to God. And the reason why I guess he's saying kivyachol because he comes along, he's saying something quite radical in a minute. He says it's right at the end of the section underlined. He carries on. How does the study of Torah with love and fear lead one to have devekut with God? Like, how does that happen? He says because the breath that is within the speech that we speak during Torah. So when we learn Torah, we have to say it with our mouths and with our breath. We have to speak it out. When we do that, this breath attaches itself with the upper breath, which is God's breath. And the voice which we speak with, that attaches itself to the voice of God. And so we saw in the Sefer Yetzirah how Atik Yomin is comprised, Ruach HaKodesh is comprised of Kol Ruach and Dibur, the voice, the breath, and the speech. This is what he's referring to. So this is the same principle. So that is the breath of God, the voice of God and the speech of God. So our breath and our speech and our voice, when we do it when we do it with this attachment and this itlahavut, this enthusiasm, what we're doing is binding our breath, our speech, and our voice with God's breath, speech, and voice. And speech with the upper speech. And also the thought. The thought is attaches to God. And this is the meaning of what the rabbi said when they said that that the Shekhinah speaks from within the throat of Moshe. So what does that mean? So the Zohar comes on, it says in the bracketed section, in the Faithful Shepherd, which is a section of the Zohar, that it says the Blessed Holy One and the Shekhinah, which is technically speaking referring to Zer Anpin or Tiferet and Malchut, they are speaking within his mouth. Shemachmat Godel Kedushato. So that's the end of the bracket section. Let me just see if the rest is relevant. Yeah, so he explains more, but that's the principle the Zohar says that when the rabbi said that the Shekhinah was speaking from within the voice, within the throat of Moses, it means that it is that the Kush HaBricha, that God and the Shekhinah were speaking through was speaking from Moses' mouth. So Abu Lafia brings it as well, that it says about Moshe Daber, as Moses speaks about Elokim Yanenu B'Kol, and God responds to him with a voice. And the Gemara and the Chazal say B'Kolosh Moshe, with the voice of Moses. That means that what they mean is God was speaking through his mouth. Moses' speech was the same as God's speech. So God was speaking through his mouth. That's what we're referring to. So i.e. what Baal Shem Tov was telling us that when we are so connected to God, And later on, in the next section, he says how it was on account of Moses' great attachment to his source, which is God, to the root of his soul, which is God. There became an inseparability, a unity between those two things. His breath connected with God's breath, his speech connected with God's speech, and his voice connected with God's voice, to the point that there was no separation, so that God can speak through his voice. This is the principle of attachment, of how our meditation can lead, how meditation on the letters and the sounds that we've been seeing in the Psukim, in the Mishnah, and in the Sefer Yetzirah. This is a principle by which the practice works. So it's not just simply a matter of you're concentrating on the words, on the letters, and that leads you into that concentration on the letters is kavanah, which leads you into a deeper level of concentration, which is devekut, which leads you into a deeper level of concentration, which is shtavut, leads you into deeper concentration, which is hatziva. But again, even the words tell you what it is. Kavanah, you have attention. And then at least it's devekut. He's speaking about devekut. That leads you to devekut. And devekut is not just a word, devekut, which means something. It means attachment to God, because within the letters is God. Then the letters is divinity. And that's what the next sections I want to look at through a book here, which I think is really good. And we'll look at it. We'll look at it now. So this book here is called Vocal Rights. It is a recent volume it's called Vocal Rights and here it is. Vocal Rights and Broken Theologies. What's the subtitle there? Cleaving to Vocables in Rabbi Israel, Baal Shem Tov, Mysticism. So it's a bit of a mouthful, that title. It's a recent publication by Moshe Idel, who was an expert in Abulafia and Baal Shem and Chassidut also, and Kabbalah in general. And what he speaks about here is how his main argument of this book is that the scholars who looked at the devekut that Baal Shem Tov taught in regards to letters actually refers to sounds and not the visual image of the letters, which is how he says the previous scholars understood the teachings, the sources in Baal Shem Tov and Chassidut. So he wants to come along and say it. Again, I'm not convinced that that's what they did think. But he comes along and he makes this big point that when there is cleaving, when there is attachment to devekut, that devekut is to the sounds and not to the visual shape and image of the letters. And I agree to that. I agree to to that principle in practice as well. When you do the practice, you should sound it out. You can even imagine the sound, and that sound is what will carry you through to it. And I guess that's the reason why it's hevel and kol. It's the sound. It's not necessarily the letters themselves. There has to be a kol, the voice, and the breath, and the meaning itself as well. But anyway, without that, what this book also is an amazing compilation of teachings of Mekorot on this particular practice and on meditation. So even though he doesn't talk about meditation here, he does talk about meditation, but he kind of dismisses it in some kind of ways, but because people believe that meditation was a attachment to visual images. Anyway, but that's his argument, which is what I want to go into. But it's a great source of all these Mekorot. And so I want to go through a whole selection of these Mekorot that he brings here, which I think are really helpful and useful. Let me stop sharing this one in front of us. Okay. So unfortunately, I don't have it. I'm unable to. You're not going to be able to see it, so you have to just listen carefully. Hopefully, I'll speak slowly, read out slowly, so you'll be able to understand it. So the first section I want to look at. Let me see. I'm going to put it down there. Okay. I'm not doing it in the same order he's doing it. I want to look at the only text we have, which is attributed to the Baal Shem Tov directly, and which is most likely to be from the Baal Shem Tov. This is the Yetzirah Kodesh. This is a section from, and this is what he says there. Okay, so the Yetzirah Kodesh, by the way, is a letter which the Baal Shem Tov wrote for his brother-in-law, Pinchas Karetza. No, not Pinchas Karetza. Gershon Akitov. Isn't it? You don't know? I believe it was Gershon Akitov. I believe so. If I am mistaken, then please correct me in the comments or something. So this letter was never reached the Ketova, and was eventually included, I believe, in Toldot Yaakov Yosef, or one of the early books of that were published by on Chassidut, and because of that, I guess we now have an authentic written document from Baal Shem Tov. Anyway, this is part of it. So he says, he's giving advice to his brother-in-law. Ach zot ani modiacha, v'Hashem yeh be'ezocha, v'nochach Hashem darkecha, right? ובפרט בארץ הקדושה, בתפילתך ולימוד בכל דיבור ודיבור. So he says, he begins by saying, this is what I will teach you, and that Hashem will help you, and Hashem should be in front of you on your journey, especially when you reach the Holy Land. And when you, and especially when you reach a Holy Land, your prayer and your learning, bechol dibur v'dibur, in every single speech, every single dibur v'dibur, every single, not word but speech, hamotzi umotzi svatecha, and whatever emanates from your mouth, any word, any letter that emanates from your mouth, tav'in liyached ki bechol ot ve'ot yesh olamot, that you should know how to unify, do this practice of unification. What does that mean? It means ki bechol ot ve'ot, and why? So why? First of all, it says why. Maybe, and as a liychud, actually, I don't think it explains what liychud means. I think liychud means devekut, really, that you should bind yourself to it, or possibly mean also, maybe that is the meaning of what the Ari spoke about, zichudim, unification. And he explains to you why. He says, because bechol od ve'ot yesh olamot v'neshamot v'elokut. This is the central principle that we see in Baal Shem Tov over and over again. He says, in every single letter contains universes, olamot v'neshamot, and souls, ve'elokut, and divinities. Every single letter contains universes, souls, and divinity. Ve'olim mitkashim mityachadim ze bazeh im elokut, and they rise and they tie themselves up and they unify each one with the other, or each one to themselves, and also with divinity, with God. And the letters themselves bind together or unify together, and they become words. And they unify in a complete unity with God. And your soul will also become bound up with them, with these letters and words, in every single aspect that I've mentioned just now. And all the universes will bind themselves up, will unify as a single unity, as one. And they rise up, and they will make a great joy, great simcha v'tanug, happiness or joy and blissfulness without measure. Just as the simcha of chatan v'kala, or the bride and groom, just in the manner of the happiness of the bride and groom, which is in katnut, in a small way, or in mochin de katnut, the small principle, and in v'gashmiut, in its physicality, v'kol shekin b'ma'ala, all the more so in this way. So just as the joy of the simcha of the chatan kala and our small universe, the small gashmiut physical universe, it will be like that, and it will be more so, even more so, based on these higher principles of unity. So he's linking the yichud of the soul to the letters, and the letters together, and the letters with God, and all the universes together, to the union between man and woman, husband and wife. In another section he says, Kichol teva nichlal mikol ha'olam. He says, every single word contains within it the entire universe. Every single word, Kikol teva nichlal mikol ha'olam. Every word contains within it the entire universe. Again, amazing principles here. He says, again, it makes sense when after we've been learning the Sefer Yetzirah, how we see that the letters are the substance of creation. Everything we see around us is the speech of God, the ma'amar of God. And so when we realize that every single letter has the potential to create universes, it has the potential to create souls, and it is the essence of divinity. It is the breath of God. We saw Ruach HaKodesh. Kol Ruach Dibur is Ruach HaKodesh, speech, breath, and voice. Ruach HaKodesh. So he says this is our words as well, our speech, our breath, and that's why it's things like Lashon Hara, and we have to be very careful about how we speak, because every one of our and we have to be careful how we breathe as well, where we breathe, I guess, because it's all part of a divine process, and we have to realize that the neshama is neshamat elokim, like the breath we breathe in is the divine breath, kol neshamat hallelujah, and every breath shall praise God. So this is a central idea from Baal Shem Tov, that we are binding ourselves to, that our central principles we bind is devekut, is to bind ourselves to God, which is the practice we've been talking about, kavanah, devekut, hishtavot, this meditation, this concentration practice, which is the absorption, we absorb ourselves within God. We saw this right back at the beginning with Avraham ben Arambam. He says that this bodedut is connecting and communing with God in its ultimate sense. And the Baal Shem Tov comes on and he says, this is through the letters and the sounds of the letters and the voice and the breath of the letters. Okay, so that is from Yetzirah Kodesh. And I want to now look at Mekorot from Yaakov Yosef al-Polnoi, which was the one of the main students of Baal Shem Tov. And his book was the first book published on Chassidut. Okay, which one I'm going to start with? Okay, so I'm going to start with, this is from Toldot Yaakov Yosef, which is the first book published on Chassidut, and this is the book which contains the most numbers of, I've heard this from my master, so it contains the most amount of quotations from Baal Shem Tov himself. So this one is, it starts like this. לפי מה שקיבלתי ממורי שעיקר עסק התורה והתפילה היא שידבק את עצמו אל פנימיות ורוחניות אור אין סוף שבתוך התורה והתפילה. So we saw in Sefer Baal Shem Tov that the ikar of avodah is devekut, and that's connected to learning Torah and to tefillah and the attachment of our breath to God's breath, etc. And he says here similar thing from Toldot Yaakov Yosef. He says, and this is what I have received from my master, the Baal Shem Tov, that the essence of Torah and tefillah, the learning of Torah and tefillah and prayer, hu sheyidbak etzmo אל פנימיות רוחניות אור אין סוף שבתוך אותיות התורה והתפילה. That a person should attach himself, should have devekut with the internal, with the inner meaning, the spiritual ruchniut, which is the or en sof, the light of the infinite, the light of the or en sof, which exist within the letters of the Torah and the tefillah. So we attach ourselves to the pnimiyot, to the inner, to the inside, to the inner aspects and the spiritual aspects, which is the light of the Ein Sof, which are existing within the letters of Torah and Tefillah. Again, don't forget that the Torah is the speech of God. So when we read Torah, we're actually hearing the speech of God, and that is Or Ein Sof, really, the manifestation of that. So he says, and this is what he refers to when we attach ourselves to these. The inner meaning or the light of the Ein Sof within these letters, that is called learning Torah Lishma, which is a central idea in Judaism. From where? The beginning.
Like, what's Torah Lishma?
So Shehu Nikad Limud Torah Lishma. So what is that?
When you connect to the innerness, that's Torah Lishma.
Exactly. When we attach ourselves to the Pnimiut, to the Ruchniut, Or En Sof, Shebetoch Otiot HaTorah VaTfilah. We attach ourselves to the Pnimiut, to the Ruchniut, and the Or En Sof, which are within the letters of the Torah. This is called Limud Torah Lishma. Shebezeh Amar Rabbi Meir. This is what Rabbi Meir in the Gemara says. Ha'osek b'Torah Lishma zocheh l'dvarim harbeh. Somebody who engages in Torah for its own sake merits many things. U'megalin lo razeh Torah, and they reveal to him the mysteries of Torah. etc., etc. He says. And the Baal Shem Tov explains, שידע עתידות בכל מאורותיו מתוך התורה. That is, that what does it mean that that they should learn many things and they reveal to you mysteries of the Torah? That is, he should know the future. He should be able to understand the future and understand all the things which have happened to him. All the events that will happen to him through the Torah. You can see that there. And you shall come to know how you should behave with the Torah and in God's service. In addition to the fact that he also sees universes, the universes above, the upper universes. This is in the Torah of Yaakov Yosef. He says, this is what I have heard from my master. So we see that the essence of devekut, at least how we have it in this particular aspect, is through the tefillah, through the letters of the tefillah, letters of Torah, and letters of the Torah, which is the letters themselves, which is the speech of God. So we attach ourselves to God's speech, which within that is the Or Ein Sof. That way we attach ourselves to the Ein Sof, and through that we become to have these mysteries. What he's saying is that through meditation we can come to understand the way of the universe. We can just come to see what is going to happen. And it's kind of like this rarefied thought. So I don't really like going in too much to these ideas because I think that people attach too much to the idea of seeing the future and revealing mysteries. I think more important is what he says, that through the Torah you'll see you'll see yourself. You'll see all me'orotav, you'll see all the things which are happening to you, all the events of your life. You'll come to understand yourself, which is, for me, I guess maybe even better, greater than seeing the future. But what he's saying is that you'll have a clarity of vision, and you'll be able to see what's there. And this is what meditation can do for us. Let me look at the next section. In the next quotation this is from Ben Porat Yosef, which is another book of Torah of Yaakov Yosef Al-Ponoi. Again, it's the same idea. V'inyan devekut, the meaning of devekut to God, hu al yedei otiyot Torah. This is through the letters of the Torah, v'atfilah, and the letters of the tefillah. Shidbak machshavato b'pnimiyot v'ruchniot shebetoch ha'otiyot, that you should attach his thoughts to the pnimiyot and the ruchniot, to the spirituality and the inwardness that are within the letters. Besod, and now he brings a pasuk in the mystery of yeshakeni b'neshikot piyu. So this is from Shir HaShirim, that may he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. And i.e. what he's trying to say here is that, just like we said, God's speech is the Torah, and Tefillah is God's speech. The letters are God's speech, and so it's coming out of God's mouth. So when we attach ourselves to that, what we're attaching ourselves to is to God's mouth. Yeshakini m'neshikot piyu, that may he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. So we're attaching to that. And he says, devekut rucha b'rucha, and what we have is an attachment of spirit to spirit, or more accurately, of breath to breath. The breath of man and the breath of God. And this is what and this is what I've learned from my master. Im tishkivun ben sefadayim, ben sefadayim. So I'm not sure where this pasuk is from. I should have looked it up. And it says, when you who dwell within the lips, within the upper and lower lips. So I should have looked it up really before mentioning that. But it's the same principle of we're dwelling, or we are lying within the lips of God, because we are in his mouth almost. When we attach ourselves to the breath of God, again, the same principle that we see that the breath of man is actually the breath of God, because God breathes into Adam nishmat chaim, the breath of life, when God breathes into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. So it's the same principle, but when we attach ourselves to the breath of the mouth, we're attaching ourselves to the breath of God, who breathes into us as well. And again, I'm just going to go through all these psukim, I'm kind of racing through these mekorot. If you have any questions, and I will receive questions if you want to. I'll wait for you actually. Any comments at this point?
Just to say, very beautiful ideas.
Okay.
Very beautiful. Interesting. One word, like one letter, can create the universe. It's just interesting how you can have like one word, like someone says to you like one word, or there's one word that can particularly hit you when someone speaks to you, like emotionally charged, and then you create a whole thing out of it.
That's true.
Massive thing out of it.
Not just one word though, one tiny little gesture, one tiny little tone of voice, even the tiny
once you label
it
with one, you can have a massive narrative resulting from that.
That is a really, really great example. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely right. Yeah. Exactly. Like tiny little part of speech we build from it, and not only that, but the person can build into it. Universes and souls and all sorts of things. Very, very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, great.
I find it also interesting idea. I think it was Chernobyl Rebbe I saw it, but the other way around, and it's a common Hasidic idea that by permuting letters you can deconstruct, and you can. It's kind of in what
I've seen that one. That's in your book.
And you deconstruct them back to their original primal unity, where the words could have any meaning, or they've got no bite, and you can completely radically shift the meaning and what the word says to you, or the resonance it has with you by permuting the letters. And I tried this, as you know, with the names of people like who troubled me. It had a radical effect.
Amazing. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, exactly. Again, what we'll do when we look at the next section of Sefer Yetzirah, we'll look at Seruf. We'll look at how Seruf or Tiyot is another aspect of it, and how through that, just exactly what you saw in that. And it's an amazing quote that you found, by the way. It's in your book, right?
Yes,
it's in your book, right? I remember you showed it to me because we already realized that.
Yeah.
Remember the time
it was very hard to translate, so I asked you to help translate it.
That's right. Yeah, that was an amazing quote. I really appreciate that you found that one. But it's like absolutely right. So Tzeruf can actually take us beyond that, take us to the source of the letters, to Hatziva. Again, an amazing principle. But we'll see this now, actually. So we're going to look at the next section. We're going to see how we've just looked at how we attach ourselves, how devekut is the central principle, and how devekut is achieved through attachment to the letters, because they contain universes and souls, and how that is and how we should and the light of the Ein Sof. But now we go into more practical details. So this is actually not from Toldo Yagim Yosef. This is from the Baruch HaMedzibush in Botina de Nahora. So this is Baruch HaMedzibush, was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. So we look at one quote from there, and then we'll also look at another quote from the Toldo Yagim Yosef, which says something very similar. Let me see. Okay, so this is the first quotation. Yetzirah, I'm going to give you some advice. And God, so that God shall be with you. Gibor Achai. So the God who is the Gibor Achai, who is the strength of our life, or that the one which gives us strength. So I'm going to give you some advice about the strength, so that God will be with us, who is the strength of our life, or the Gibor, the mighty one who gives us strength. Bechol boker. This is the advice. בכל בוקר ובוקר בעת לימודו ידבק עצמו באותיות בדבקות גמור לעבודת הבוראו בראשו ובראשמו, ואז ימתיקו הדינים בשורשם. So in every morning, he says, this is an interesting principle, because we wake up in the morning and sometimes we're like, we have either a good day or a bad day. We don't know. What should we do so that God can give us strength? And this is what he tells us to do. Every morning, when we learn, again, I guess it also means when we study as well, when we pray as well. You should attach yourself to the letters themselves. So even if you don't necessarily, it's hard for you to attach to the meanings of it, but if you attach to the letters themselves, but devekut gamur, with a complete attachment for the purpose of the service of God, blessed be He and blessed be His name, then what will happen is yamtiku hadinim b'shorsham, the judgments, that the negative judgments that are upon the person will become sweetened in their root, and I guess that's a way of yamtiku hamtakat hadinim, it's called. So when there are negative things happening, then what we want to do is sweeten those judgments, and this is a way of doing it, attaching ourselves to the letters themselves. Again, he doesn't say even attachment to God, he says attachment to the letters, because over here, we've seen the letters contain within them divinity. Okay, and a similar principle that was pretty from Baruch Medjibush. It's also in Shifchei HaBesht. In that quote I just mentioned was in Shifchei HaBesht also, in the praise of the Baal Shem Tov, hagiography of the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, now we see the similar principle, a similar teaching from Toldo Yaakov Yosef. Shamati Mori, I've heard from my teacher, which is Baal Shem Tov, when a person perceives that he has there are certain negative things happening to him. There are certain dinim which are coming upon him. At that time, he shall learn in the morning. He should learn in the morning with a attachment, a great attachment, and a desire, hashika. That he should attach himself al pnimiut or and sof shebatocha otiyot. So you've already seen. Baruch Medjibush doesn't talk about the pnimiut of the letters, or the or and sof within the letters, but Toldo Yaakov Yosef does speak about that. It's the same teaching, but it's said slightly differently. If someone perceives that they have these dinim coming upon them, they shall learn with a great devekut and a great passion. They should attach themselves to the inside, the inner meaning of the letters, which is the or and sof, which exists within the letters. Again, so that's interesting kind of idea that we attach ourselves to these letters, and the pnimiut of the letters, the letters themselves, not necessarily to God. Which, again, this is an interesting idea of how you do that. Actually, from that, I want to look at this the similar teaching which he brings in the second chapter here, where he speaks about kavanah. So what we saw just now, when someone is in a place of dinim, means that you're having a hard time. Like you wake up, you're in a bad mood, or you're worried about something, people you get a message that unpleasant message or whatever it is, call from work, whatever it might be, email. That moment, what you should be doing is learning, or the best thing to do is to learn or to pray and attach yourself to the letters themselves. And we'll see what happens. We'll see the movement that takes place here. Let me just see if I just want to make sure I wrote down the order I wanted to go through, and I was to make sure I've done that correctly. Okay. So, what should a person do when they're in kavanah? He says it. This is from the Shifchei HaBesht. Not Shifchei HaBesht. This is from the Tzavat Rivash, which we've seen previously in a different class, and it's also printed in Likutei Yikarim also. When a person is in a low level, in a small kavanah level, then it is better to pray from within the book. So basically what he means is ideally you should pray without looking at the siddur. He says
from within.
He says no. Basically what he's saying is that usually you should pray without the siddur, but when you find yourself in a madriga katana, when you're in a low rung, when you're low level, when you're in mochin the katanot, basically, then it is better to pray from within the siddur. Look at the words in the siddur. I always do this. I should remember this and actually look at the siddur. When I'm not concentrating properly, I'm distracted. Open the siddur, look at the letters, look at the words, and pray like that. And he says why? Because from the strength that you see the letters, the letters of the prayer, it leads to greater kavanah. It's easier for you to have kavanah when you see the letters themselves. So this is a really interesting principle. We saw how kavanah wasn't mentioned by the earlier Kabbalists or anybody else. We first looked at kavanah as a preliminary to devekut in Tzavat Rivash. And there's another section about Tzavat Rivash. It explains to you why. When you're in mochad de katnot, when you're in a place of small mind, when you can't concentrate very well, you're dinim or whatever it might be, look at the letters within the siddur. Look at those letters. And from the strength of you looking at those letters, you will be able to pray with a greater concentration. Very simple, very basic explanation of how to happen. This is such a beautiful thing because it shows you the subtlety and the minutiae speaking about how do you overcome distractions. Very basic principles. Look at the letters, and then that will be the first rung for kavanah. And now, what does he say? What is the mystery of katnot? He says it, and this is actually from Keton Basim. It's another book from Yaakov Yosef Ponai, and he speaks about what is katnot, what is mochin de katnot, small mind. בסוד הקטנות שאין עבודתו שאין עבודת השם ברח מאהבה מהירה רק על דרך ההכרח וטורח רב. So the mystery of katnot is that within your service of God, it is not from love and from fear, but is only through compulsion and torach. It is burdensome for you. So that is what it means when you're in katnot, when you're in mochin de katnot. It means that you haven't got much concentration. It's just you have to daven because you have to daven. You're not doing it from love and from fear. Bli ta'anug, he says, without enjoyment. Shenikra yemei katnot. This is called yemei katnot. This is the days of immaturity. Yemei katnot again is a Kabbalistic principle from the Ari. When yemei katnot means childhood, really. When you're in childhood, but it means a childhood in terms of spirituality. You're immature. You don't have that joy or the understanding of it. And then he just ends the thing. Kasher shamati ze memori v'katavti b'makom acher. So this is what I've heard from my master, and this is what I wrote elsewhere. Go and have a look there. So this katnot means that it's hard for us to concentrate. We're not enthusiastic. We can't. We feel the burden of this Torah. So again, this is why we said that we have the first principle is kavanah. We have to have kavanah. What is kavanah? Kavanah is looking at the letters and attaching ourselves with great attachment to those letters, to the image of the letters. Right? Okay. And now we see this again in more detail. And this is from again another section from Keton Pasim. Hachacham enav b'rasho. The wise person is a quote from I'm not sure. It's definitely in Chazal, it's definitely in the Gemara. I'm not sure if it's in Makar somewhere else. The wise person has his eyes in his head. A wise person will see, basically is what it means, and will understand, and will be able to observe whether they are in a place where we're able to have proper kavanah or not, whether they're able to attach themselves to the inner aspects of Torah and the letters, and to derive thereby enjoyment. Mutav, that is good. That is great. That is a good thing. Someone who's able to do that. But when he looks at himself, again, this is a mindfulness practice that you should be wise and be able to understand and to see where you're at, what level you're at, and to know when to apply things. And if you see that you can do that, you can have kavanah, and you can have devekut, then great. But if not, if you observe yourself that you're in the mystery of katnot, you're in yemei katnot, your immaturity and spiritual immaturity, your mind is distracted, and you cannot, you don't have kavanah, you're unable to have concentration, because you have a lot of distractions in your mind. This is what we saw last time we looked at hakika, in hatziva. So concentration, the first aspect of concentration is that you have to have applied concentration. Applied concentration means you need to keep applying it, because otherwise our minds are distracted. There are thoughts coming in, so we have to keep applying concentration. So this is the same principle as kavanah. Kavanah means you apply attention, and then a thought comes in, a distraction comes into your mind. Then he says, then you shall pray like a baby, a 1 day old baby, from within the letters that within the written words. Now, a 1 day old baby obviously can't read from the Sefer, but he's exaggerating somewhat here. You should pray like a newborn. I.e., what he says, if you find yourself having a lot of distractions, the first principle of kavanah is to pray with the letters, the visual image of the letters themselves. This is what my master gave testimony about himself. Shaya be'eretz acheret, when he was in a foreign land. I'm not sure whether this foreign land is actually a real foreign land, whether this foreign land is a metaphor. So when he was in a foreign land, zman ma, for a prolonged period, b'fchina zu, in this particular aspect of katnot, shenistalek mimeno haniskalamam, that this, what I mentioned above, this concentration, this bliss, was removed from him. He didn't have it. And he used to attach himself to the letters. So the letters himself. When I pray from within the written text, when he's in this, then what he does is he elevates the level of Asiyah. So this is the level of Asiyah, the universe of Asiyah, which is we saw universe of Asiyah, the letters themselves, the thing itself, the dibur, the thing itself, the davar. You raise that level of Asiyah, and this is what he means by ki tevat bet bina, because the letter is the word bet. The letter bet means bina. So what he's saying is that when you attach ourselves to the letter bet, what we're doing is actually raising. If we do it properly, what we do, we raise it up to bina, which is bria also. Bet is bria and bina, and we find ourselves in the world of machshava, which is bria. So you go from asiyah, which is the world of physicality, of action, to machshava, if we have the proper attention. So we are able to elevate that. This is what he taught to a particular individual. You should do this, attach yourself to the letters themselves, to the physical letters themselves, until you are able to elevate yourself to a higher level, to a former higher level. And the words of the mouth, the words of the mouth of the wise person is grace. Again, this is a really beautiful idea of how we see how this is the level, the stages of concentration. This is how we begin to attach it. This is what we did beforehand. When we did the chanting, we do the physical letters that we say out loud. That helps us with concentration. So this is a really interesting principle. So again, he says you should pray within the letter, within the so you can see the words themselves. This is when you're davening, when you're davening. Look at the siddur itself. You can do it, but also the sound is part of asiyah. It's part of that same thing of like it gives you something tangible to hold on to rather than just thinking it. But we can then elevate ourselves to other levels. Now let's go to the general principle of what he's referring to here. We see asiyah, we see bria. What is it talking about? Okay. This is a quotation from Yetzirah Shem Tov, which is another compilation of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings. Okay, this is the general principle that we've been looking at just now. When a person begins to do their concentration practice and meditation practice, he should go initially in the universe of asiyah, of the physicality, from the letters themselves, from the physical appearance of the letters. You should begin there. Begin with that which is physical. And then you shall yifrach. It's an amazing idea. You shall float, fly up. Yifrach also means flower. You shall bloom. But it means like you shall rise yourself up. You shall float, fly up in your thought to a high level. And then even a high level. So you should go to the world, the universe of the malachim, the angels, and the ofanim, and the ofanim with the wheel angels. So again, he doesn't say what this is specifically. Malachim normally could be corresponding to the angels. Generally correspond to olam Yetzirah, which is the level above, which is the universe above asiyah. Ofanim, however, correspond to the olam asiyah. They're actually the angels of the olam asiyah. Possibly he's just binding them, joining them together. He says generally angels are from the level of Yetzirah. And then then he shall raise himself up to the olam bria, to the universe of bria, which corresponds to bina, which is the universe of the throne. Until you shall feel in your thinking. Again, yagish b'machshavato. You shall feel in your thought. It is like it's an imagination thing. You're feeling within your thought. You're going into deeper levels of imagination there. That you have raised yourself up in your thoughts. Parach, again, this idea of parach means like you're like flying in space. You're like floating up and flying in space. And blooming, because parach means a flower as well. You're rising up, flying up in your thoughts, even to a high level, to a great level, which is the Olam HaAtzilut, or universe of Atzilut, which again we've seen as the world of no thought. Olam of Afisat HaMachshava, the effacement of thought. And now he gives an analogy. He says, this is like a person who what did I say? What did I translate it as? He wanders from room to room. This is how one should wander through his thoughts, and in the higher universes. Again, really amazing idea that we have to raise ourselves from these different levels. So just like we saw this, we mentioned last time how we have 4 levels of kavanah, devekut, kavanah, devekut, hishtavut, hitbodedut, and that corresponds to tohu bohu, refes petit, and the 4 levels of hakika can mean arga, hatziva can mean choma, make a wall, make them like engrave them like a bed, carve them like a wall, cover them like a roof, like a ceiling, and then pour snow on top of them. These are the 4 universes of Asiyah. And we even saw this in the Gra, but he's a different alternative way. But we see this as Asiyah, Yetzirah, Briah, Atzilut. We're moving through these universes like that, through this concentration. We saw this right at the beginning as well. How we have Olam Asiyah, which is the universe of action. Olam Yetzirah, which is the universe of speech. Olam Briah, which is the universe of thought. Olam Atzilut is the universe of above thought. That's supposed to be Afisat HaMachshava, the effacement of thought. So this is how we do things. This is how it's working. We're going to see the same principle when we look at mindfulness and hitbodedut. And next week, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll finish it. If we finish this week. Again, so these are the beautiful, beautiful ideas. I'm getting very excited about it. So I hope I'm not just rushing through and taking you through too fast. Okay, so let me now move on to another quotation for you. I've got 2 quotations for you here. This is again an expansion of what we just saw. So we just saw about raising ourselves from Asiyah to Atzilut. Now we look at a more descriptive extract from it about it. Okay, he starts. This is from Magid of Rabbi Yaakov. This book to Magid of Rabbi Yaakov, which is generally got quotations from Magid of Mezrich, but I had other quotations as well, I think, from other people, and also Or HaEmet, and in Keter Shem Tov, and in Keter Shem Tov Hashalem. There's quotations in multiple places. And it begins, but tefillah tzarech lasim kol kocho b'diborim. When we pray, we have to put all our strength into the speeches into what we're saying. And we should do this from one letter to the next, until we forget our physicality, our bodies. And we shall come to imagine, to perceive that these letters are joining themselves one to the other. And this is a great joy. And all the more, and as it is a great joy in the physicality in Gashmiut, all the more so beruchniut in spirituality, which is ruach, which is breath. And this is the universe of Yetzirah, the universe of speech. Or the universe of ma'amar, the universe of ruach. Then you shall reach the level of otiot machshava, the letters of thought. And what is the letters of thought? The letters of thought of that that you don't even hear what you say. It's just in your mind, and it's just a concentration. You're just in your mind. There's no longer any sound of the speech. It's just letters of thought. This means that you've reached the level of Briah, the universe of Briah. V'hakach hu ba lemidat ayin, and then you shall come to the measure, the midah, the characteristic of ayin, of nothingness. Batlu etzlo kol kochotav hagashmiyim, that you shall find a nullification and annihilation of all your physical capacities, strengths. V'zehu olam ha'atzilut, and this is the universe of atzilut, midat chokhmah, this is chokhmah. Yeah. So again, this is a beautiful idea. We can see the same principles over and over again. Now we're seeing it from meditation, from concentration practice. And again, he brings another thing which I think is useful to see. We just saw how we're now looking at the letters, the diburim, and the physical shape of the letters, and then to the ruach and the sound of the letters, and then to the letters of thought, and then to the level of ayin, where there is not even the letters of thought. And we see it, there's a quotation from Rishut Chokhmah, which is Eliyahu Davidas, who was a student of the Ramak, I believe, and before predating the Baal Shem Tov. And he says here that he comes to explain that HaTorah, okay, so the reason why I wanted to mention is because he says here that speech is the idea of Yetzirah. So we saw that there's Maaseh, there's action, there is Yetzirah, which is speech, there is Buriah, which is Machshava. And later on, actually, just to bring another thing, there's another connection between Machshava, because what is the letters of thought? So it can either be like physical, like either be like you're hearing imaginary things. Also, previously I said that everything is letters. We saw Ratzu B'Shov, and the Ratzu, everything is letters, but the Machshava is letters as well. True. Baal Shem Tov, actually I didn't bring it in the previous quote, though. In the first quote I mentioned today, he says that the letters, that the Machshava, all our thoughts are also letters. It's in Baal Shem Tov Bechukotai. He says that our thoughts are made up of letters. Again, but I'll bring you another thing here which says the same thing. This is from Kol Aryeh, which is, I never heard of this person before. This is Aryeh Lieb Galina of Polnoy. I'm not sure when he lived or who he was. But he says here, Machshava v'hadibur achdut echad. He says that speech and thought is one thing. When we say speech, like I said, speech running Ratzu v'Shov, the Shov is the silence, the Ratzu of the speaking, and the speaking includes thought as well. So, Otot Machshava. So, even if it's not actual letters of thought, just thought itself, without imagining letters or hearing letters, thought itself is letters. Is dibur, speech. Let's see, is that what I wanted to say? Yeah, so for the time being, I think that's enough. There was another section here that which I thought about bringing, but that's a really deep inyan there, really powerful idea. Maybe I'll bring it at some point. And that was from Kedushat Levi about speech, about the enactment of speech. But let's look at the Sefer Yetzirah and finish this whole section from there. Okay, so in front of us here, we see I've put together this Mishnah, like we did in the first section. You want to have a look?
Yeah.
So this is how I did the first sections of the Sefer Yetzirah. So we see here like how there's all these ideas are there in front of us. We have 4 levels. We have Tohu Bohu, Refes Petit. We have hakika kemin araga, hatziva kemin choma, zivan sicham kemin ma'aziva, yitzak shedek. All these different ideas of what is going on here. And we see Asiyah, Yetzirah, B'riyah, Tzilur, the same principles, kavanah, devekut, ishtabut. These are all the things we've been looking at. Action, speech, thought, and no thought. So this is why I think that I've always thought this, right? When I first started learning Chassidut, the books of this. So I've come from the ecstatic Kabbalah. That's where my practices come from. And when I first started learning Chassidut, which initially I dismissed because I thought it was a strange thing, it wasn't something which appealed to me, I suddenly realized that especially the Baal Shem Tov was a ecstatic Kabbalist. This is the practice that he came from. This is what he did. And then again, we see these texts, and I'm really glad that Moshe brought this text out, because we see how this is the big preliminary practices of ecstatic Kabbalah. So even Abulafia and other ecstatic Kabbalists, they bring tziruf as the first thing, and hakika, hatziva as more advanced technique in Shlam Aliyah and Sharet Tzedek. Abulafia, actually, it was a preliminary practice in Abulafia. But here we see how to do it. The first practice of meditation is you attach yourselves to the letters. You attach yourselves to the shape of the letters, to the sound of the letters, to the breath emanating from the letters. And we go through this stage, these different stages. Kavanah, devekut, ishtabut, and these, again, we saw how there is yichud. So we first have kavanah. We attach ourselves to the letters, but we're in mochin the katnut, we're in a place of smallness. We attach ourselves to the letters, we read from the Siddur. That leads us to devekut. Devekut leads us to ishtabut. Ishtabut is an amazing word. It means everything is equal. Shaveh, everything is equal. This idea of shiviti Hashem kenegdi tamid. I've placed God. I've made everything equal to God before me. And that leads us to explicity, which is being alone with God, like we saw in Rambam. And the Rambam himself, everything is about being alone with God, which is the ultimately afisat machshava, which is within Olam HaAtzilut. That's what we got here. The same ideas. Asiyah is connected to kavanah, Yetzirah to devekut, B'riyah to shishtabut, and Hatzilut to hitbodedut. So one thing that, okay, so I want to bring some idea from Abulafia and one idea from the Arizal, which again, the Ari might sort of throw a spanner into the works a little bit. But the idea from Abulafia, who predated all these people, he says that Moshe was Ra'ed Son. Moshe was a shepherd of flock. And that was one of his powers. He had this power. And for Abulafia, this whole principle of these letters and the teraphim, all these different ways of manipulating words and letters, is to attain the divine, the state of divine inspiration, prophecy, which is like what we right at the beginning. This is the Maaseh Merkavah. This is the universe of Atzilut, the upper unity, the perception of the Merkavah. And he gives Moshe an example, and the Torah calls Moshe Ro'ed Son. He is a shepherd of flock. And Abulafia says that the word son, which means flock, is Tzadeh Aleph Nun. Tzadeh Aleph Nun is Terufim, Otiyot, Nekudot. That's how he says it. So he says that Moshe had this power and ability over the Terufim, the Teruf of the Otiyot themselves, and the Nekudot, which is the vowels. And so these are the main principles that we use to attach ourselves with devekut. We use this. So we do tserufim. We attach ourselves to the vowel, which is called haskara practice, which is what we do in the chanting, and which is the nekudot, which is the vowel practice, and then the otiyot, which is the voice, or which is the consonants. We attach ourselves to the letters themselves, and this is something which we also see in the Ari. So the Ari comes along and he says that these Asiyah, Yetzirah, B'riyah, Hatzilut, all these things connect to the four letters of Hashem's name, Yud, Hei, Vav, Hei. And the Ari, he comes along and he says that the aspects of speech. So he comes along and he says there are four. He connects four aspects of speech, or merely it's maybe not even speech, it's letters themselves, and they connect with these four letters of the divine name. And these is called Tanta. Tanta is Ta'amim, Nekudot, Tagin, Otiyot. This is what I've got here at the bottom. Now the reason I want to bring to you, I didn't come here to confuse you. I wanted to bring you to highlight certain aspects. First of all, it's a bit confusing. He says there are four aspects of the letters. There is Otiyot within Olam HaAsiyah, the letters themselves, which are within Olam HaAsiyah, the Tagin, which is the crowns of the letters. So when you look at the Sefer Torah the words in the Sefer Torah, you see that they have little crowns on top of them. Above the line, there is little crowns on top of them, and those are called tagin. And he says that those correspond to Olam Yetzirah. And then there's the nekudot, which are the vowel signs, and they connect to Olam B'riyah. Then there is a ta'amim, which is the cantillation, which connect to the Olam Atzilut. Now, this is why I think that what he's bringing here is something different. So what we've been speaking about voice and vocable, like our Moshe does speaks about, which is sound, which is the way we speak. Those are connected in different ways. We have the letters, we have the shape of the letters. Then we have the nekudot, which is abulafia, which Baal Shem Tov also says is the soul of the letters. So the tagim, the nekudot, the sound, the vowels are the soul of the letters. And I actually even believe the Gemara says this at some point, someplace. I'm not sure where exactly. But the letters, the soul of the letters are the vowels. So not like you'd think here that the tagina are the soul of the letters, right? But no, Abulafia and Baal Shem Tov, they say the vowels are the soul of the letters, because the vowels, Abulafia says, give life to the letters. They have no sound unless there is a vowel before them. And 1 minute. Yeah. I'm trying to think of what's the next bit. So where the breath comes in. So okay. So what I was going to point out is this. So the asiyah connects with the letters themselves. Then bri'ah, the Yetzirah, will then connect with. I've made a mistake here. I have made a mistake. So then with the Yetzirah, you have the sound, you have the breath, which are part of the same thing. And then you have the thought, and then you have the afizat mashal. This is why I put it like this here. So what I believe that Abulafia, that Ari is doing, actually is looking at the physical notation. So when you look at the sound, then it looks different. When you look at the whole principle of speech, it looks different. When you look at the physical appearance of the letters, what we have is four ideas, four elements. We have the letters themselves. We have the tagin of the letters, which are separate. Then we have the nekudot, which are the vowel sounds, which are written in a particular way. They're separate. And then the tamim, the cantillation, which are written separately. So I think that's what he's referring. That's why he's bringing these separating these things as the different elements to it. But why I brought them is because he connects ta'amim with atzilut. And ta'amim is the idea of nigun, right? So when we speak, just like we were speaking to Ronan before about the tone of voice, that a letter contains a universe, but even a tone of voice contains a universe. A tone of voice is ta'amim. It's the pitch. It's the pitch of your speech. The length of or how slowly you speak, how fast you speak. This is all connected to that notation of it. The music is almost like a musical notation of it. All of these are aspects of speech. They all contain stuff. So the letters, the sound. Really, what the letter is a sound. It's a placement of the tongue in the mouth, or an opening of the mouth, or a placement of the lips or the teeth or whatever it is. That is the letter. And then there is the breath. When we speak, when we inhale, all of this carries meaning with it. Then there is the voices of the vowels that we use, which are attached to the letters, the consonants. Then there is the pitch that we speak. The volume, all these other aspects of it. So that's connected to it. Final idea is that nigun is the reason why I think nigun is so important. Is that one of the highest levels, because nigun connects with ta'amim, and that's why Abulafia says that we should, whenever we do this practice of Yetzirah Fotiyot, he brings this Atar and Ganuz, that we have to do it with nigun. We have to have it with a nice voice, a nice nigun that we bring into it. So we can use nigunim to enter into this high place. So when we do, that's when we do our chanting, or we do nigunim in Sudash Lishita, whenever we do our nigunim, this is an aspect of this meditation also. So nigunim can take us into a high level of concentration very quickly. Anyway, so that's kind of like a real kind of run through of it. Really kind of, again, we raced right through it. But again, these texts bring us these central ideas of it, of how we raise ourselves through these levels of concentration. Okay, so I also want to ask one question. Do you want to do a practical session next week? Or do we move on to another meditation? Again, the whole series has been about meditation. about theoretical.
For me, either.
Okay.
Either's fine.
So possibly we'll do one next week just for as a practical meditation, but we'll leave it for this week like this. And then B'ezrat Hashem, we'll move on to mindfulness.
Yes, I agree.
Great. Okay. Stop.